Hello, this is Tim from Vintage RC Garage. Today we're going to do an unboxing of the Tamiya Fox model number 5851. The Fox is a 1/10 scale Tamiya buggy that was released in October of 1985. It was last produced in 1991. The Fox chassis was unique in that it was the only model that used that chassis, although the Fox did borrow some of its design features from its predecessor, the Hotshot. The Fox had one re-release, the Nova Fox, that was released in 2013 and is still sold today. However, it contained only minor changes from the original. The box art was dominated by a rich blue color, however many enthusiasts preferred a red shell over the traditional blue. The Fox came with a 540S motor, which was an upgrade from the traditional 540 motor that came in most Tamiya models. The Fox was designed to be as light as possible and weighed in at just under 3.5 pounds fully assembled. The Fox contains a minimal amount of parts when compared to some of the other models. This is evident with only 2 pages on the manual dedicated to all the metal plastic parts included in the kit. Alrighty, let's get into it. First up are the R parts tree and the C parts tree, which came packaged together. The R parts tree contains the upper and lower wishbone arms for the rear axle. The C parts tree contains the left and right front wishbone chassis mounts and the left and right rear wheel hubs that connect to the wishbone arms. The B and Z parts tree also come packaged together. The Z parts tree contains the driver figure. The driver includes the entire driver base, which includes the hands, arms, and torso on a flat base. Also, a 2-piece head and helmet is assembled with a connector. Lastly, the steering wheel attaches to the driver base. The B parts tree contains both the left and right Nerf bars, which are made up of 3 individual parts before attaching to the chassis. Also included is the motor guard, 4 servo mounts, and the front chassis crossbar. The most recognizable part on the Fox are its gold rims. These are a highly sought after part on this model because they scratch easily, so they are hard to find in good condition. The front rims hold thin tires and come with large holes. The rear rims are wider but come with smaller spoke holes. All 4 rims are only gold plated on one side. The tire pack contains a blister pack with all 4 tires included. The spiked rear tires come on the outside, while the thinner grooved front tires are sandwiched between the rear tires in the middle. The Fox was the first model to use the bright yellow dampers that were also seen on later models. The Fox has a 3 oil-filled damper setup with 2 rear shocks and a single shock for the front mounted horizontal across the front chassis. This tree contains the shock cylinders, caps, and piston caps. The rod parts bag is next. It contains steering rods in 50 and 65mm lengths, plastic bearings, body clips, steering rod ends, zip ties, tape, Allen wrench, rubber waterproofing grommets for the front and side of the chassis, on-off switch cover, steering servo extender, battery mounts, and bearing spacer clips. The Fox used a front waterproof grommet that sat in a front chassis opening to allow steering from the servo, and also a side grommet where all wires exited the chassis. This was supposed to make the radio box waterproof but also retained heat. The body shell had a separate rear wing. It comes protected in a blue protective film that gets removed after painting. The blister pack contains many of the larger parts. The lid contains 2 ceramic resistors, a 15 and 18 tooth pinion gear, large and small ball bearings. The Fox is one of the few models that come with a complete set of ball bearings. 2 drive shafts covered with a rubber boot, a 540S motor, 2 axle shafts, rear damper stay, mechanical speed controller, 2 resistor covers, grease and switch lubricant, damper oil, and standard wrench. Also included in the blister pack are 3 bags. The metal parts bag contains 5 body mount screws, 4 5mm ball connectors, and 4 8mm ball connectors. Also brass sleeves in 7x10mm, 7.5x12.6mm, and 5x21mm. The second bag is the screw pin bag. These are unique screws that only thread nearest the screw head. They come in 3x32mm and 3x46mm lengths. Also 2 3x38mm motor mount machine screws. The last bag contains the gear bag. This bag contains the large differential gear, 2 large bevel gears, 3 small bevel gears, and 1 counter gear. Opening up the blister pack box, we have the S and D parts trees that are packaged together. The S parts tree contains the servo savers and servo heads. The D parts tree contains the left and right gearbox, 2 rear damper stay spacers, servo head accessories, 2 rear axle adapters, chassis connector, and steering servo stabilizer. The X parts tree contains the remaining yellow damper parts, which include 3 identical trees of large and small damper spacers, damper piston caps, piston spacers, and oil diffusers. The Fox does not come with a usual clear antenna sleeve, but rather a metal post that the antenna wire is wrapped around. Moving on, the press parts bag contains 2 resistor mount plates, 2 front steering rod protectors, 4 front wishbone mount plates, and 2 front arm knuckle mounts. The ever exciting screw bags are next. In screw bag A, we have a 3mm machine screws in 6, 10, 15, and 20mm lengths, 3x8mm tapered machine screws, 2.6 by 6mm machine screws, and 3mm flange nuts. Screw bag B contains 3mm tapping screws in 8 and 12mm lengths, 2x10mm machine screws, 4mm wheel locking nuts, and 4mm and 5mm washers. Lastly, in screw bag C, we have 2mm machine screws in 4 and 6mm lengths, 2.6 by 10mm tapping screws, 3mm grub screws, 2mm nuts, and 2mm and 3mm washers. In the largest of the tree parts, the A parts tree includes the front bumper, the battery cover, front and rear skid plates, motor mount, on-off mount, and chassis spacers. There seems to be an extra screw bag because I couldn't find this one listed in the manual. The damper bag contains all the remaining damper hardware, which includes the piston rods, the shock springs, 2x10mm pins, 2mm earrings, and damper diaphragms. The decals are rather mild compared to some other models. The color scheme is gray with some medium blue highlights. The front bumper has bright yellow and red decals that inlay into the top of the bumper. The decals come with both the numbers 2 and 3 for the shell, as well as a few choice sponsor decals. The side windows had netting decals that complete the racing look. For travel, the body shell is held into the box with a raised section of the Lexan body flange that tucks under the box inserts. Like the wing, the body is also covered in a blue protective film to prevent painting overspray. There are no identifiable letters or markings that would identify it as original. Underneath the body shell is the chassis and the radio box cover. The chassis is a single piece and the radio box is completely enclosed when secured. The main complaint of the Fox was that the chassis design, it was difficult to maintain since you needed to take the gearbox and chassis apart and split it into 2 separate parts in order to get into the radio box or the gearbox. The Fox came racetrack ready with a front and rear double wishbone suspension design. The Fox was one of the first models to provide BEC or battery eliminator circuitry, so the heavy 4-battery receiver pack was no longer required. One of the most popular hop-up parts that people purchased was an optional front stabilizer bar that was needed to help correct the understeer. The manual appears to be a standard Tamiya version, however once you get past the front page, all the details are only provided in Japanese. This makes it more difficult to identify the parts you need while building. Usually the part details are provided in English, Japanese, and 1 or 2 other languages. The monotone pages with blue highlights still remain. Thanks for watching my unboxing of the Tamiya Fox. If you have a request for my next unboxing, visit my blog collection page at vintagercgarage.com and send me a note. See you next time.